So what can we expect from the Trump administration now that talks with Canada are back on? Pete Hoekstra is the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks. Thank you for the invite.
Happy to have you at such an interesting time. Now, Canada has given the U.S. government what it wants, rescinding the digital services tax. Did Canada get anything in exchange, Ambassador?
Well, I think what the President and the Prime Minister did is they put the talks back on track. Okay? I mean, one of the President's advisors came out today and said, yeah, we're ready to start talking today. I think the Prime Minister has indicated something very similar. So, yeah, let's get this back on track. And I think there were some not so nice things that could have happened if, we hadn't seen the developments over the weekend. Now
do you mean
it's
tariffs?
all positive things.
Not so nice things, you mean tariffs?
Well, I mean, the President indicated in his message last week, Friday, he talked about tariffs. Our Treasury Secretary indicated that there would have been a beginning of a 301 investigation into the unfair nature of the digital services tax that would have been initiated most likely today. Neither one of those things is going to happen. So we're going to be talking about positive things in terms of how do we get to an agreement.
Okay, I did not hear you say whether or not Canada got something in exchange for rescinding the DST, but the White House press secretary was pretty pointed. She said today Canada caved.
Canada got a reopening of the discussions, which Friday night, wasn't there. Friday night it was done. Okay, Friday night it was, we're done talking. We will we'll pursue other avenues on the digital services tax. The President talks about 18 countries that we want to negotiate with. Canada moved from the front of the line to the back of the line. Today they are back at the front of the line.
Did Canada cave or not, Ambassador? Do you share that assessment?
I've got the utmost respect for our President. I have the utmost respect for your Prime Minister. They've developed a personal friendship and I think a colleagueship that I wouldn't describe caving or whatever. I just say, hey, these two guys, and I've said this before, they're two leaders in a hurry to help the people of their country, and they both agreed that this was a positive way to go.
And yet the U.S. would have knew that this was coming for some time, right? This is something that Canada has talked about since 2020. The law passed a year ago, and yet it just suddenly became a red line, visibly to the public on Friday. And I wonder, was this just part of the art of the deal?
No, the art of the deal. I mean, the President this came up at the White House when the President and the Prime Minister talked. I specifically remember talking with Greer, our trade representative, saying, hey, is this on your radar screen? He said, oh, yeah. He said, I wrote the protest to the digital services tax. It is right up there on our radar screen. It came up again multiple times at Kananaskis in the meetings that I was in, and again, including the meeting with the President and the Prime Minister. So, yeah, we all knew it. The President's team had articulated clearly for as long as I've been in this position, this is a red line. And so there was always the hope and the expectation that being in the middle of negotiations, hoping and anticipating that we might have an agreement in 2.5, 3 weeks, that this would be a bad time to implement a whole new element into the discussion. But it happened. There was a response. There was a counter response, and now we're back on track.
You say we're back on track. Do you think the two countries still have a hope of meeting that 30-day deadline? Is there still a possibility of a deal? Because it obviously lost a few days.
I've talked to both sides over the weekend. I think both sides are optimistic that they can get to an agreement within that time frame. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's always something that can sidetrack it. But they both want to get to an agreement. They've got qualified staffs. We got smart people in the room that are working on this, that they have the capability, the desire, and the will to get there.
You are being very positive about all of this, talking about things being on track. U.S. President said in his interview with Fox News over the weekend that Canada is, quote, very nasty to deal with. How is Canada nasty, Ambassador?
Well, I think Canada, I want to be very, very positive because the relationship is a great relationship.
But these are the words of your president.
No, I know. And we're going to be stronger after this than maybe what we are right now. It's going to be an even stronger relationship. But, what is the president thinking about? Oh, they just slapped a brand new tax on us that we've told them for months is an unfair tax. Oh, by the way, you have 11 out of your 13 provinces who ban American products on their shelves. We haven't banned a single Canadian product in the United States. That's a pretty nasty move, okay? You have a number of your provinces have put in provisions into their procurement process that say, oh, if you're an American company, oh, yep, you can't bid. That's pretty nasty.
Yeah, but that was in response to the U.S. slapping major tariffs on this country.
Exactly right now.
So responding is nasty? I'm just trying to get to the heart of this, Ambassador.
Where we are today. Okay, I will accept your characterization of potentially putting tariffs in place. Okay, 90 to 95% of the products that we trade are USMCA compliant, which means there are not tariffs on them.
Yes, I mean, I think we can both acknowledge that the road to get there was pretty complicated, but you've talked about...
We simplified some of those, okay?
But let's talk about the path forward, because I know you're enthusiastic about that. Donald Trump also complained in that interview about supply management, right? The access to the U.S. market when it comes to, or the Americans' access to our market when it comes to things like dairy and poultry. You would know, of course, that there is a law that is passed that hamstrings the Canadian government's ability to make concessions on supply management. You're smiling. That means perhaps that there's not a lot the government can do. Do you think that stands in the way of a deal?
I was part of that other group, not Parliament, but Congress, the equivalent of two systems are different, but I was part of Congress, and I understand what your Parliament said about you can't do that. I also know that at times we in Congress would do the same thing, to our president or executive branch, saying you can't do that. I have a strong belief that if we negotiated a trade, that if the Prime Minister and the President got to a trade agreement, okay, and for whatever reason it included something that Parliament said you can't do that the Prime Minister probably could find a way to get Parliament to do its will, just like the President today and over the weekend has been working with Congress to try to pass the big, beautiful bill, our tax bill. Prime Ministers and Presidents, they've got a tremendous amount of power. I'll leave it there.
Okay, there is a lot more we could say about supply management. We only have a moment left.
There's a lot we could say about supply management, absolutely.
And I do want to ask you about the 51st state. You had to have known this question was coming because, of course, the president brought it up again over the weekend. It does seem to come up when things are getting a bit tense and a bit intense. Is Donald Trump using threats against Canada's sovereignty as a negotiating tactic?
It is not a threat.
How is it saying that Canada should become a state? He said we're not a real country before.
I think, your Prime Minister, I forget what he said within the last week or something, and said, this is he didn't use exactly this word, but a term of endearment. He
has said it's a wish, a desire, rather than necessarily a reality. You think it's a term of endearment, Ambassador Hoekstra?
Yeah, President Trump doesn't invite people onto his team who he doesn't like, who he doesn't trust, who he doesn't respect. He wants a strong team.
So your message to Canadians is they should see this 51st state talk as a term of endearment.
They can see it however they want. Far be it from me to tell Canadians how they should view the president's comments. But the president does not invite people on his team, on America's team, or to grow our team with the belief that by doing so, we're going to weaken America or weaken them. The president has said it. He said it when we're in the Oval Office. I love Canada.
Yeah, there's inviting on the team, and then there's suggesting taking the country by economic force.
We are not going to take the country on. Okay.
So I do want to ask you in closing. You have said before that the president is done with this 51st state business.
No.
Yeah, you said he might mention it, but okay.
We were done.
Yeah.
It would only come up if the someone's going to go back and get my exact words, but I believe it was somewhere along the lines, if it comes up again, it will be because of the president bringing it up, the prime minister bringing it up, but it will not be me. I have no instructions or whatever to move and, work with people in Parliament or at the provincial level to say, hey, let's talk about how we can get this 51st state thing moving again. And, the
gist I understood of what you were saying, and we can check the tape later, is that this chapter was closed. The Prime Minister seemed to insinuate that too. Do Canadians just have to live with, on the eve of Canada Day, do Canadians just have to live with this term of endearment of 51st state, as you put it?
They have to live with what the president said. If they want to spend Canada Day focused on what the president said over the weekend, they can do that. The forecast is we're going to have a great day. You've got, Diane and I are finding out, you've got all kinds of celebrations and events that are planned. You're going to have fireworks. I think there's a whole lot of better things to be spending tomorrow on, to be spending on Canada Day than, thinking about what the president said over the weekend.
Okay, yeah, a day to celebrate Canada's sovereignty. Ambassador?
We are going to be celebrating Canada Day for the first time in Canada.
Celebrating Canada's sovereignty?
Celebrating Canada's sovereignty. We did it multiple times in the Netherlands. That's what we're going to be doing, and I hope that's what Canadians are focused on as well.
Happy Canada Day, Ambassador. Thank you for your time.
Happy Canada Day. Thank you.
U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra.